Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott. One of the best things about mirrorless bodies in general, and particularly true of Sony mirrorless bodies, is the kind of flexibility that you have in adapting lenses from other systems to those bodies. Perhaps like myself, I think that there are a lot of photographers out there that like mirrorless as a lighter alternative to, bigger, larger, full frame DSLR kits. And I certainly like to always have a mirrorless body on hand just because I can throw something small and light on there and yet still have very good image quality. And so when you begin to invest in a system, you may have other lenses that you want to transfer over. And so you begin to research the different adapters that will allow you to adapt lenses either that are from vintage times. M42 mounts, for example, adapt really well to a lot of systems. But then also you, in some cases, can actually have your lenses from other systems. Canon EF mount is what I'm looking at here. And adapting EF mount lenses to a Sony mirrorless body, either an APS-C like this A6500 here, or to systems like the A7R series. And so there actually are quite a few options to do that. Now, there's a little saying on the internet that says your mileage may vary, and that certainly is very true when it comes to each one of these adapters. And at this point, I have used the Metabones V adapter, I've used Sigma's MC11 adapter, and then today I'm looking in particular at a couple of alternatives from the company Vello that I wanted to look at and kind of focus this review on here today. And so why I mentioned that your mileage may vary is that one thing you'll quickly discover is that the user feedback on these adapters, it varies very widely, and none of them have like a 5-star rating consistently. And that is because your experience with adapters really depends a lot on the lens that you're putting in front of it. Just the nature of it is that there's no one adapter that I've experienced yet that does a great job with all lenses. And so it's a bit complicated in that some lenses they adapt really well, or with certain adapters, and then other lenses they don't really adapt very well at all. One thing I will say that I see kind of collectively across the board is that a lot of the newer lenses that are coming out more recently, they seem to do a little bit better a lot of times with adapters than what older lenses do. And I don't know if it's just because of the nature of the the focus algorithms at this point, but I'm finding that with some of these newer Tamron lenses that I'm actually getting fairly decent autofocus performance with a lot of the adapters, which is not always true with all of my lenses. So let me just start by looking at the Sigma MC11 adapter. Now, if you have any interest at all in shooting Sigma lenses on a Sony mirrorless body, the MC11 is the best adapter for you. And while it says on here designated Sigma lenses only, that's certainly not exclusively the case. There are a number of lenses that focus fairly well using the MC11 adapter, and in some ways it's one of the best adapters of the bunch in terms of overall versatility. One kind of intrinsic advantage that the MC11 does have is that it actually has, and this is something that I will say that in general Sigma has been very smart about. They're the ones that pioneered the concept of a USB dock. And similar to that, it actually has a port right in it for bringing firmware updates, and you'll actually use the same Sigma Optimization Pro software for that. It allows you to keep the adapter fresh, and so if there are tweaks along the way, either in new lenses or in the unique relationship between camera bodies and lenses, you have that option of doing the firmware update to the actual adapter itself. The other advantage to the MC11 is that if you're using Sigma lenses, you get the most consistent autofocus experience that I have seen with adapters on Sony bodies. And so typically autofocus works quite well. The worst example I've seen is I just recently did a review of the 14mm f1.8, and while it still focused accurately and reasonably quickly, I found that it did pulse some before settling on a kind of a final figure or final point there. But that's not been my experience with other Sigma lenses that I've used. I found that for the most part, they actually autofocus quite well, accurately. And one big advantage is that with certain Sigma lenses, and again, you know, your mileage does vary depending on the lens itself, but you will actually get servo AF or continual autofocus during video recording, which you're not going to get, at least in my experience, with any other lens slash adapter combination. And so I haven't yet seen with any of the adapters I've used, from Metabones to Vello to Sigma, with these Tamron lenses, for example, I am not seeing any kind of video AF. And so that's an advantage for that particular adapter. Now, the Metabones is a fairly expensive adapter, and what I found with the Metabones is that it doesn't necessarily work better with combinations that I've used than what some of the less expensive combinations do, or less expensive adapters do. And again, your mileage may vary there as well. There may be some lenses that the Metabones does a fantastic job with, that it doesn't, you know, some of these other adapters don't do as well with, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Now, looking at one of the, you know, the least expensive adapters is one of these from Vello. And so this Vello adapter, it comes, for one thing, it you know, like the Sigma adapter, I mean, bottom line is that these really, other than the electronics and spacing out appropriately, you know, from the actual sensor with what they call the flange distance, that's helping to make sure that lenses are at the correct distance from the sensor, and so that they autofocus over the appropriate range, you know, from minimum focus to infinity. But, you know, in between here, there's just air. And so there's nothing optically that's different between these two adapters. You know, the Sigma adapter is 200 and change, and this Vello adapter is $100. And in terms of the actual build, the Vello is actually a little bit more metal construction than what the Sigma adapter actually is. And so it's not really about build quality either. Both of them will pass through the electronics, and both of them will give you autofocus, you know, to varying degrees of success depending on the lens. There are a couple of advantages to you, perhaps to you, on using this particular adapter from Vello. For one thing, unlike the Sigma, and frankly, I'm quite surprised at the oversight from the Sigma, is that the Vello adapter actually does come with a tripod foot, which means that, you know, obviously you can take that on and off, but if you're using heavier combinations, which, you know, a lot of times, obviously here, this is a heavier combination right here by comparison. And so if I were using this on a tripod, I would want to be using the foot, you know, and so that I could have a more stable platform for shooting on. And for whatever reason, surprisingly, the Sigma is just not designed for that. So that's one advantage to this less expensive adapter here. And, you know, as I said, it's a metal construction. I've actually been really pleasantly surprised with the build quality of it. The finish of it is, of this particular Vello adapter is, you know, it's kind of like the older Sigma EX lenses. It's kind of a crinkle finish. Not necessarily my favorite finish, but, you know, build quality is nice. But one advantage here that the Sigma doesn't allow for, and that is all Sigma lenses, even if they're APS-C lenses, they're actually, they're all use a Canon EF as opposed to EF-S mount. And so as a result, the Sigma adapter doesn't allow you to put some of Canon's EF-S lenses on it. You know, for example, this EF-S 24mm f2.8, this is like a perfect lens for adapting to, you know, a mirrorless body, because even with the adapter attached, it's still a nice, you know, compact combination. And so as a result, you know, it's a very natural, excellent balance and fit on this, you know, Sony APS-C body. And obviously it's an APS-C lens, and so it's just a great system for that. And the autofocus is nice and snappy through this adapter, and so, you know, it's a great experience there as far as that goes. But you can't have that on the Sigma body. So again, you know, or the Sigma adapter. So again, your mileage may vary. And frankly, with a lot of these lenses that I own, I don't necessarily get a better autofocusing performance with the Sigma adapter, the more expensive adapter, than what I do with, you know, this less expensive Vello adapter. And so, for example, with, you know, say this Tamron 45mm lens, with the Sigma adapter, I get a certain performance. With the Vello adapter, I get pretty much the same performance, and autofocus is fairly good. So if I throw the same lens onto the Sigma adapter, I still get pretty much the same kind of performance. In fact, I got a little bit of a pulse there, the first with one shot, than what I did with the actual less expensive Vello adapter. And so again, it's your mileage may vary kind of thing, but certainly if you're not shooting Sigma lenses, the MC11 adapter isn't necessarily an advantageous one for you. Some lenses will focus better with the MC11 adapter, others will focus better with the Vello adapter, at least in my kit. And so unfortunately, there is no real standard as to what kind of performance you're going to get. However, if you think there's any possibility you're going to shoot Sigma lenses, then obviously go with the Sigma adapter. Now, if you're wanting to adapt manual focus lenses, any of these adapters do the job. I mean, because obviously it has nothing to do with autofocus performance. It's really just about changing the flange distance. And so any of these adapters with auto contacts will work just fine. It is important to get one with the contacts, however, particularly if you're adapting, for example, a Canon mount Zeiss lens, because Canon mount Zeiss lenses have no manual aperture ring. And so one key component that you need to get there is that you're going to be controlling the aperture from within the body itself. And all of that works perfectly. It meters fine. And of course, these mirrorless bodies really are exceptional on so many levels for shooting manual focus, both from the autofocus or the manual focus aids that they have, the ability to magnify the image in the viewfinder, seeing true depth of field. All of those things I really enjoy using my manual focus glass on a mirrorless body. In fact, my current plan is that I'm going to been using a Canon 6D DSLR with an EGS focus screen a lot for my manual focus glass. I'm actually strongly considering going to the new Sony A7R III for the simple reason that it's a full frame camera, and it will allow me to be able to have that excellent performance in terms of the resolution of the body, but also all of these aids to help me in manual focus. And so that's all interesting. Now, there's one final adapter that I want to give you a look at. That's if you have a Sony APS-C mirrorless body, it might be an interesting option for you, and that is this Vello Accelerator adapter right here. Now, the key difference with the Accelerator is that unlike these others, it actually has elements in it, glass elements. It has 4 elements in 4 groups. So it's a simple optical formula, but what it does is that it actually applies a magnification factor of 0.71 times. And so the way that changes things is that it switches what would be the crop angle of view from your full frame lenses, and it gives you the full frame view with your full frame lenses, even on APS-C. So in this case, that crop factor equals out to a 31.5 millimeter lens, which then if you multiply by the crop factor of the camera body, you get close. It's not perfect, but you get close to the actual original full frame view of the lens, while continuing to have autofocus, again, to varying degrees of success. The other kind of very interesting thing is that these elements also open up the possible maximum aperture by 1 stop to not only give you the angle of view of full frame, but also the shallow depth of field of full frame on APS-C. So in this case, rather than this is a 45 millimeter f1.8, but it behaves like a 31.5 millimeter f1.3 lens. So I can actually open up the aperture to f1.3 here, which of course is fantastic for the light gathering potential of the lens. And so I can get lots of light in there. And then when I actually take the shot, it's going to give me the shallow depth of field and look of full frame, once the crop factor is back on there. And so, while it doesn't approximate perfectly, it's close, and it just allows you some more versatility with your existing lenses to, even if you have an APS-C mirrorless body, to get the look maybe that you're missing from full frame. It's an intriguing option. Now, this again, I've been really impressed by the build quality, and I actually like the finish. The finish is actually different here. It's more of an anodized, just kind of sleeker black anodized metal look. That's a really great match for, you know, say this Tamron lens that I have mounted here. It looks great together. And so as a result, that certainly is intriguing there. Autofocus, you know, some lenses autofocus great, some not so great. Again, it really is lens specific. Now, if we take a quick look here at a visual kind of test of sharpness, we'll see how both the angle of view changes as well as the resolution changes when looking at it. So here you can see a quick visual comparison of what happens by using the accelerator. I'm using the Canon 35mm f1.4L Mark II lens, an exceptional lens optically. So you can see this is what the full frame angle of view or equivalent looks like, and so it registers as a 24.5mm lens and a maximum aperture of f1 compared to here, which, you know, shows the Sony crop factor, which is 1.5 times. And so as a result, we see that we've got a maximum aperture of f1.4, which is typical. Unfortunately, as we zoom in here to a pixel level, that while if we step back, the image globally looks good. At a pixel level, you can see that there's a pretty serious loss of contrast and sharpness that's taking place with the accelerator in place. The Canon is an extremely sharp lens, but we can see that that image quality has been diluted somewhat by the adapter. So here, stop down to f5.6, we can see that, you know, sharpness and contrast have improved significantly here. There is a exposure difference here, but, you know, as we can just see that at a pixel level, there is more detail that's being rendered by the straight up adapter. But now we can see there is good image quality across the frame on the accelerated version. So just for the fun of it, I thought I would do a comparison between the Sigma adapter here on the left and then the Vello adapter here on the right. And so you can see that one advantage for the Sigma is that it does attempt to pass on EXIF information. It's not exactly right, but, you know, it's somewhat right. We've got a 35mm f1.4. And so this, the Vello, it will show 35mm, shows that it's f1.4, but in terms of registering the lens, it's not really communicating anything properly there. In terms of the actual result here in the center of the frame, you know, these are they're just air, and so it's more about spacing. So they should deliver a pretty similar result, and that in fact is what we are seeing. However, on the edges of the frame, for whatever reason, just right here at the very edge, the image gets a bit softer here on the Vello adapter, and so I don't necessarily know the reason for that, but it's certainly obviously there. So as you can see, there is some degradation of image quality with the accelerator on there, but like with all of these things, it's kind of a your mileage may vary situation, in that I find that some lenses seem to take more of an optical hit than others. And so, for example, the Tamron 70-200 f2.8 G2 lens, you know, I've taken some shots with it that, you know, really look fantastic. You take a look at this, the detail there is pretty amazing, and that shows up as a 142mm f2 lens, and so it's certainly a very interesting perspective at that point. And so all in all, definitely some unique options here, and once again with the Vello, I've been impressed with the packaging, the way that it comes, the quality of the actual adapter. But on that note, the list price for this adapter is $499, which, you know, frankly, is more expensive than what most people are going to be willing to invest and maybe should invest for something like this. However, ever since I've been looking at it, it's been on a semi-permanent discounted price of $300 off and at $199, which certainly makes it an intriguing option at that price point, just to give you a different look at some of your lenses. And if you have two systems like I do, it's a way to maximize the potential of some of your existing lenses and, you know, maybe use them in a different way here. And so all in all, you know, the The results are varied with each one of these adapters, but certainly as far as these Vello adapters go, they seem to offer good value for the money. And so if you're looking for an inexpensive adapter, I would recommend this basic Vello adapter here. If you're planning on shooting Sigma lenses, even the possibility, go for the Sigma adapter. It's going to give you the best experience with Sigma glass on a Sony body. But if you're not really a Sigma shooter and you're wanting to utilize maybe some EFS lenses, go for the Vello adapter. The Tamron lenses and Canon lenses seem to work as well with this as they do with the more expensive adapter. And then if you've got an APS-C body and you want to have that full frame look and you have some full frame lenses, you might want to give the Accelerator a try. It's an intriguing option. It's also interesting for video work if you're interested in doing that. I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'll throw some links in the description down below to each one of these products if you'd like to pick one up for yourself. You can also follow me there on social media and become one of my patrons. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.